With most of Europe under his control, Adolf Hitler looks east. Operation Barbarossa, the lightning-quick invasion of the Soviet Union, commences. Between the Daugava and Dnieper rivers lies the city of Smolensk, the gate to Moscow. German armored forces of Army Group Center are already encircling the city. Free Soviet armies run the risk of getting closed in, with the only resistance coming from a combat group under Konstantin Rokossovsky. Let's take a closer look at the battlefield. Guderian's forces in the southern pincer try to dislodge the Soviet troops, but fail. Hoff's 39th Corps do not. With the pocket closed, the total German victory is secured. But how did we get here? And what happens next? To answer that, we need to go back in time. The 1800s, Northern Germany, Prussia. The Prussians, no strangers to war, coming from a massive defeat against La Grande Armée at Jena-Auerstadt, form the Grosse Generalstab, aiming to defeat Napoleon's brilliance with institutionalized tactical excellence. Concepts known today by all Western militaries are born and tested here. And oh boy, do they work. All good things must come to an end, however. The Western Front of World War I proved that regardless of how skilled officers you have, against modern fast-firing artillery and machine guns, infantry alone stands no chance. With no room for maneuvers, the front quickly degenerated into trench warfare. If only there was a way to return to the Prussian visions of maneuver warfare, back to the Clausewitzian ideals of Kesselschlacht, cauldron battle, trapping the enemy in pockets and then destroying him. The late war technology of the tank, protected against shrapnel and bullets, looks promising, but how should it be used? With the Imperial Army no longer, the Reichswehr, the cadre army of Weimar Germany, with visions of motorization, a desire born out of stipulations from the Versailles Treaty, start reorganizing. Hans von Seeckt, as commander-in-chief of the German army, lays a strong foundation of doctrine, tactics, training and organization. The later Wehrmacht was largely his creation, with Hans envisioning a victory through highly mobile combined operations where infantry, armor and the air force coordinated in encircling and destroying the enemy. Oswald Lutz, the overseer of motorization efforts during the 1920s and 30s, developed the later Panzerwaffe together with his chief of staff, Heinz Guderian. Under his command, a truly armored force, capable of Kesselschlacht, was turned from theory to reality. Heinz Guderian himself, being the supreme architect of this modern Bewegungskrieg, maneuver war, called for armored concentrations, radius in each tank, and coordination between armor, infantry, artillery, and air force. A perfect armored storm was brewing inside Germany. Out in the Atlantic, for the UK, victors from the Great War, things are looking different. Even though some theorists, like Jan F.C. Fuller, have a more modern view on combined arms and maneuver warfare, the army in general, strapped for cash, unlike the Navy, were caught up in endless discussions about how to use the tanks, leading to a split doctrine without unification, or if the tank is a viable weapon at all, or just a policing tool to be used in the colonies. The cruiser and infantry tank debate leaves the British armoured force and doctrine disjointed. Coupled with a rigid and traditionalist military establishment and officer corps, the Brits are left flat-footed, come a European maneuver war. crossing the Channel leads us to France and Jean-Baptiste Etienne, who envisioned armored breakthroughs as early as 1921. However, the French military establishment favored defensive operations with tanks dispersed in support of the infantry. A defensive and limping France, suffering from the trauma of World War I, betrayed the visions of Etienne, the father of the tank. Moving east to the Soviet Union, the prominent general Mikhail Tukhachevsky, a believer in combined arms, is tasked together with theorists such as Alexander Svetshin and Mikhail Frunze to develop a new unified military doctrine following the defeat in the Polish-Soviet War. The theory, which would be known as Deep Battle, was to fuse the Bolshevik ideals with the Soviet military in preparation for an inevitable war against the capitalist West. Through operations across a wide front, the Soviet army was to achieve a breakthrough in the enemy line. Funneling troops through the gap, enemy command, and even industry would be destroyed. Stalin's Great Purge would later take the lives of the creators of Deep Battle, together with a huge portion of the officer corps, thus destroying the competence gathered in the interwar period. Coupled with a myriad of issues, enough for a video of its own, this would leave the Soviet army in a nightmarish state in 1941. So, what does all this tell us really? The answer is not as straightforward as one might think. While the German tank doctrine and design was modern for its time, it was not, in my opinion, the deciding factor. We yet again have to go back to the Prussians. As earlier stated, they wanted to teach their officers tactical excellence. But how does one even teach that? It starts with understanding war in of itself. Let's take a look at how that might look on a battlefield. My apologies in advance for the poor artwork, however I think it will serve its point. What we have in front of us is a made-up train where two sides will fight. The scenario is set in mid-World War II, with both sides equal in equipment, numbers, combat drill and motivation. The main and really only difference which we will be looking at is the method of command. We will be looking at Auftragstaktik contra Befehlstaktik. Auftragstaktik, part of the Clausewitzian school, is usually associated with a significant knowledge sharing and evolution of command as far down the military hierarchy as possible. The ideal of this theory is one where every plan has to be reviewed by the officer in charge of it. He is not only entitled, but also obligated to voice any concerns he might find. He may on his own accord in battle change the plan as he sees fit and delegate it to his subordinates. Befehlstaktik, on the other hand, is characterized by the belief that war is controllable, at least to an extent. It is a far more centralized approach that relies on higher-ranking officers being expected to be in control of the battlefield. Lower ranks and junior officers are expected to, by rule, follow orders without independent reflection or initiative. This does not mean, according to the Prussian School of War, that the two methods are in direct opposition to each other. Different situations call for different solutions, and an officer is expected to be able to act accordingly. However, I think that for that to be possible, an officer needs to first be able to act under Auftragstaktik, to even be able to recognize the difference, nevertheless to act on it. With that said, let's get back to the front lines. As previously stated, both sides are equal in manpower and equipment. The only thing different between the sides will be the method of command for the sake of this example. Both sides have a command group. Their job is to interpret orders from higher up and fulfill them as well as they can. The main combat unit will be the infantry company, numbering 3 platoons of 33 men each for a total of 99 men in the company. These platoons will follow call signs from the NATO phonetic alphabet, as will the attached mechanized recon platoon, divided into 3 separate squads with 11 men each. They are supported by 2 anti-tank guns with trucks to drag them and a mortar section. Each combat group also has a platoon of medium tanks equipped with radios with the call sign Rhino for the blue side and call sign Hippo for the red side. The primary goal for today is to seize and hold the village in the center of the map, with secondary mission to destroy all enemy forces in the operating area. Combat Group Blue is staging in the southwestern corner, meanwhile Combat Group Red is in the northeastern corner. Both commanders are competent and will try to achieve today's task following their respective method of command. Let's see what happens. Okay, first combat has already happened with Blue Lima getting caught on the road, taking 2 casualties from Red Foxtrot's heavy machine gun fire. Both sides are moving into positions, with the red side's commander having given the order for his infantry company to take up position on the forest edge to wait for his attacking command. Rhino platoon is taking up hull down positions by the slight hill, whilst Hippo is getting into position to advance along the road. Now Red is in the crosshairs with Blue Kilo catching one of Red's recon troops. However, the field's edge offers decent protection against more bursts. Lima manages to break contact with Foxtrot not pursuing, instead continuing with its mission as assigned. Take defensive posture in the tree line and report enemy movements via radio to company command. Blue Golf sprinted along the dirt road to the farmstead west of the village to exchange information with Juliet, with the recon squad reporting no enemy contact other than the exchange in the south. Golf platoon leader will later use this information when planning the attack on the village together with the other blue infantry platoons. Hippo moves into the tree line next to Red Foxtrot, taking up good positions to fire on the village during the Red infantry company attack. Red commander provides his mortar section fixed targeting points on the village. With no engagements for now, Blue infantry platoons, after converging and discussing the available intel with Blue Juliet, take up positions to attack the village. Deciding to leave Hotel platoon behind as a supporting element, Blue India's lieutenant asks the nearby AT gun to prepare a ready stack of fragmentation rounds, in case they come across opposition. Red Echo disengages to the east, as he has fulfilled his objective for now. Advance until contact and report. He reports 1 APC with dismounts to company command. Blue Lima, on the other hand, having regained its composure, gets into position for pursuit, having already told the Blue AT gun to move up previously. Rhino and Hippo platoons have not yet spotted each other, with Hippo well camouflaged and Rhino staying below the hill, with only the tank commanders peeking through their binoculars above the ridge being exposed. Red mortar section are still zeroing in their fixed targeting points as assigned. Although Blue Infantry Company started their attack from further away, they reached the town at the same time as Red. This due to Red having to wait for the commander's order, due to the mortars having to dial in their targeting points. Blue Juliet spot Red Alpha and engage from distance to gain Blue India's attention. Blue India engages with rifles and machine guns, leading to Red Alpha taking 4 casualties. In the south, Red Echo continues disengaging, whilst Blue Lima pursues. Echo radios command for tank support, however, the tanks are reserved for the attack on the village. The battle for the village accelerates rapidly, with Red Alpha taking heavy casualties, being caught out by Blue India and Juliet's fire. Blue Golf picks off a couple of Red Bravo riflemen, taking 1 casualty in the process. Blue Kilo, seeing Lima's advance, takes up position in the tree line, getting a good view on the eastern side of the village. Red Echo retreats further, taking up positions behind the road to protect the Red HQ. Hippo platoon requests new position due to not being able to see the enemy company. Red mortar sections fire their first rounds. The red mortar section hit their targets, allowing Bravo platoon to advance, though not without taking casualties. Meanwhile, Alpha platoon, taking further casualties, being reduced by 1/3 of its initial strength, has to retreat, dispersing in the woods for now. Blue Recon Kilo, receiving intel via radio from Lima about the position of enemy tanks, relays this information to the blue AT gun, who gets caught by the red Recon, who had orders to screen for Hippo platoon. Hippo platoon, holding until receiving orders, spot Hotel platoon and manage to deal a serious blow, halving one of their squads. Now the culminating point of this battle has almost been reached. Another Clausewitzian nuggets for those that didn't know. That is the point when a force is no longer able to perform military operations due to their losses. Rhino platoon spotted the red tanks from the dust kicking up after they engaged blue infantry. Firing a volley of armor-piercing rounds, they managed to knock out one of Hippo's tanks. In the farm fields to the southeast, Lima's APC gets knocked out by the red AT guns. However, the Recon infantry is well protected from shrapnel by the soft ground. Every man looking for a deep enough burrow, they lie down, hoping for the best. Kilo engages the red Recon unit as it's preoccupied with engaging the AT gun, catching them by surprise. The town turns into a slaughter for the red Bravo platoon, being engaged by multiple platoons as well as blue Juliet, whose squad leader, seeing an opportunity, took position in the wood line just north of the village. Red Command is desperately trying to gain control of the situation, but in the heat of battle is unable to command his units as they are busy being engaged. This time around, Hippo and Rhino engage each other, with both platoons scoring 1 tank each. Foxtrot, having to retreat, gets into a nasty fight with Kilo along the tree line next to Hippo. The blue AT gun, making an assessment of the enemy tank platoon's location, sees a window in this and sets up past the crossroads, catching one of Hippo's tanks in the side. Lima, still stuck in the fields, tries to disengage but gets hunted down by Echo as they received orders to reinforce the tree line. Meanwhile in the town, Red Bravo gets pushed out after taking heavy losses from India and Juliet the previous turn. Blue India follows closely and is able to take up good fire positions towards the field. Juliet, seeing India riflemen crossing the road, take their chance to push into the enemy woods. Golf and Hotel engage the remaining Charlie platoon, which has not taken as heavy casualties. It is only a matter of time though until the village is secured, with Charlie having to face 3 platoons alone. Red HQ's command cycle cannot keep up with the battlefield conditions. Meanwhile, Combat Group Blue does not face these issues, with individual squad and platoon leaders taking initiative as they see fit. Red Foxtrot and Blue Lima retreats, with survivors dispersing, both after taking heavy casualties. Red Echo, still following the order to reinforce the tree line, gets caught by the blue AT gun, knocking the APC out, with the dismounts having to flee the wreck. India platoon takes a hit from the red AT gun as they reach the eastern side of the village. The houses do offer some cover though. The remaining red tanks, caught between a rock and a hard place, try to move back as safely as possible. They get spotted and take a loss to the blue AT gun, which has taken up Juliet Squad's old position north of the village. Red Bravo, having been forced out of the village, tried to reach the forest, their nearest cover. However, Blue Juliet had gotten there before them, and they get caught in the crossfire between India and Juliet, taking heavy casualties. Charlie Platoon gets slowly pushed out by Golf Platoon as Hotel can support their advance. With Bravo Platoon surrendering and Red Charlie faced with fighting 3 enemy platoons themselves, there is no hope for the combat group Red to continue fighting, as their infantry company has been reduced to 1 weakened platoon and Hippo consists of 1 tank. The only remaining full-strength units of the Red battle group being their support elements, their only option for now is to retreat, with Blue left standing as the victors of this battle. But what can we really learn from all this? Let's get out of this battlefield and take a look. Maybe we can figure something out. To begin with learning what went wrong for the Red side in our simple war game, and how all of this ties up to the subject of this video, German tankers during World War II, we have to first understand the term Friktion. Yet again, our boy here von Clausewitz was the first to develop this concept. Friktion is just what it sounds like, friction. It is the collected effect of misunderstanding, chaos, accidents, enemy action, and other unpredictable factors that occur naturally during war. If we take chess for an example, the amount of possible chess games that can play out is a greater number than atoms in the universe, and then we are just looking at a 64 square board. Imagine the possible outcomes from just one company maneuver in war. To mitigate the effects of friction, the unseen force that makes even the simplest of plans difficult to execute, commanders must be able to rely on their own judgment through every moment of an operation. Usually the officer closest to the battle has the best understanding of the situation in front of him, if not the most up-to-date one at least. We can judge Combat Group Red's poor performance now knowing this, seeing as Combat Group Blue delegated down throughout the chain of command, letting individual squad and platoon leaders decide their next actions. This led to them having a way shorter command cycle and being able to take action quicker. Sometimes this led to poor results, such as recon squads moving too far and getting caught out. However, looking at the battle from a wider perspective, it became clear that they were able to break the Red command cycle very well, with their units being more active and able to deal with the reality in front of them much more proficiently. Many times during the battle, Red units were at a loss for what to do when their orders did not take into account the friction that would occur. Meanwhile, Blue units could quickly take appropriate actions and change their plan on the fly. As you might have figured out by now, the Germans during World War II were very skilled at this. It is a bit surprising, at least I thought so when I learned of all this way back when, that such a rigid authoritarian society, or societies such as Prussia, Imperial Germany and the Third Reich, could master a system that relies on individual responsibility and independence. But the irony in this lies more in our modern expectations than the historical development. We intuitively put together authoritarianism with rigid obedience and democracy with individualism. But the Prussian paradox shows a contrast to this, the combination of authority and independence. When I think of nations during World War II that valued mindless discipline and the following of orders to the letter, Germany does not come to mind first. The democratic European countries of the United Kingdom and especially France, however, do. I will not even mention the Soviet Union now because that is in a league totally of its own, with the modern Russian army today in Ukraine repeating mistakes that their predecessors have made in countless wars throughout history. They are seemingly a lost cause when it comes to learning how to fight a war. To win a war, on the other hand, requires a whole lot more than tactical skill. And now we will get to the last point. After all this Germanophilism that you've had to listen to, how could the Germans ever lose? To start off with, war on the grand scale between nations, not platoons, is a battle of industry, diplomacy, resources, and many other things that the Germans lacked in comparison to their adversaries. Looking at the allies of World War II compared to the Axis powers, the discrepancy in the capacity to wage a longer war makes itself clear. During no time during the war did Germany outproduce the Allies in men, equipment, or food, and after 1942, the gap was overwhelming. To begin with populations, Germany and its occupied territories numbered about 100 million people in total, Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, the UK and the US had a combined population pool of about 800 million. Even with aggressive mobilization, there is simply no way to make up for such a discrepancy between developed nations. To continue on, we will compare Germany alone, this due to the fact that Japan is literally on the other side of the world, yet again diplomacy, not Germany strong inside, and Italy being, Italy. And if someone is still here, thinking about, well, what about the minor axis? I want you to go and take a good look in the mirror, and then come back to the video. We will now compare production numbers of planes, tanks and ships in 1944. Well, ships for the whole war, but tanks and planes, 1944. Which is when Germany reached its military production peak, which is another pro moment in of itself. With Germany producing a respectable 40,000 aircraft of all sorts, they were still outreduced 4-1 by the Allies. When it comes to tanks, it was closer, but still not enough, being outproduced 2.5-1 by the Soviet Union and US alone. Shipbuilding, which we will compare 1939 to 1945, will show just how superior the Allied production capacity was to the German, with the US outproducing the Germans 20-1 and the UK 8-1. Even the Soviet Union, with its insignificant capacity, reached almost half of the German production throughout the war. What I find interesting in all of this, though, is that even when fighting against such odds, the Germans were a feared enemy by all Allied nations right until 1945. A lot of people believe that this was due to the German tanks and planes being some sort of Wunderwaffe, marvels of technology. A whole lot of other people believe that every single German tank self-combusted about 5 meters from the factory. The truth to the matter is that the Germans rolled into the Soviet Union in tanks unable to pierce the T-34 and KV tanks, while still managing to absolutely outclass them in the tactical battle so brutally that they almost reached Moscow within 6 months. In France, later in the war, Allied soldiers still feared the attrition German army, which had been reduced and reinforced many times over fighting the Soviet Union. Even when fighting young boys and old men, they could not ever really reach a tactical superiority when looking at the Western Front as a whole. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery is attributed with the quote, "You haven't truly experienced war until you have fought the Germans," and I believe this to be true for the time. The way not only German tankers, but their whole army waged war on the tactical level has influenced how we look at maneuver warfare today. NATO's airland battle from the Cold War is a direct descendant of this, with many other nations also adapting it to their circumstances. Most interestingly, all of this can be traced back to the Prussians. You'll not find a single officer in a Western army which has not studied their way of war. To conclude this video, the German tankers managed to perform their assigned duties so well in spite of their production and in some cases technical conditions, not because of them. It serves everyone historically interested to look deeper into this subject and learn about it for yourself. In these times, understanding the history of war might help understand the future of it.